Okay, so the carbohydrates chapter. This is for my nutrition classes. I'm actually doing this after I did the carbohydrates for my sports class, so I've kind of viewed the material a little bit, and I'm not so rusty on it. Carbohydrates. So they are one of the macronutrients. They do provide energy, and mostly we don't burn a lot of carbohydrates at rest, as we'll learn later in the semester. We prefer to burn fat at rest, but there are some parts of the body, like the brain and the nervous system, they prefer carbohydrates, or rather just glucose, blood sugar, at rest. So it really depends on what tissue we're talking about and the activity level of the body. Carbohydrates mostly in the human diet come from plants. You can find carbohydrate in milk. That's an animal product. You can find carbohydrates in cheese, which is made from milk. That's an animal product. You can even find, in theory, carbohydrate in animal, like flesh, steak, beef. But we tend to cook our meat when we consume animal tissue, flesh, not dairy. And the cooking process, in some ways, destroys the carbohydrate that's in the meat. Okay. In nature, when you find a carbohydrate, it's either, it's either really small or really big. There are the in-betweeners, but we don't eat that many of them. So really small, a molecule of sugar, like glucose. Glucose is a monosaccharide. We also call that blood sugar. This is actually a chemical diagram of glucose right here on the slide. That's what is floating around your bloodstream right now in great abundance. If you take two of those and stick them together, that's called maltose. And maltose isn't a monosaccharide, it's a disaccharide, di for two. Yes, there are trisaccharides and other ones, but generally for the human diet, we eat monosaccharides or disaccharides, or really big ones, which can be made up of 20, 30, 50, hundreds of sugars. Starch, which is in plants, is a polysaccharide made of many sugars. Starch is digestible. We do get energy from starch because we can disassemble it. Fiber is also a carbohydrate. It's also a polysaccharide. It can also be made of glucose, good old blood sugar. The difference is it's unbreakable by the human GI tract. That's it. So typically you eat dietary fiber, you excrete dietary fiber. Starches and fibers are in plants. Glycogen looks like starch, but it's in animal tissue. Which animal tissue? You. It's in humans. That's my cat in the background snorting. It's in cats. It's in dogs. It's our storage form of carbohydrate. You can't just store glucose in giant sacks in the body. Glucose has to be dissolved in water. We'd have a big giant sack on our back of like sugar water. So we condense it down into like a more complex crystal, if you will, just to use that term, which is kind of like glycogen, a complex molecule of individual glucose molecules. Again, there is some carbohydrate in the plant foods. Funny how they call this the protein category, which is kind of weird because like vegetables are a thing, fruit are a type of plant, fruits are a type of plant, grains are a type of plant, dairy is a type of animal protein. Protein is not a type of anything, right? Our category is broken. I need to go back to 1998 and fix it. Grains are your predominant source of carbohydrate. Yes, fruit has a lot. Some fruits like raisins. Vegetables can have a lot. But to be fair, this is what's in the foods. If we individually pick through the food supply, what do we eat a lot of? Grains. So grains for many Americans tend to be the bulk of their carbohydrate offering food stuff. That's kind of a long word, but. So here are the monosaccharides. Now, these are very interesting. You may have not heard of these before, and that's fine. Here's good old blood sugar, glucose. Here's the fruit version of kind of like glucose. I call it fructose. Fructose. It's very sweet. It's found in a lot of fruit. You can eat fructose in solution, pretty much apple juice, but generally fructose is bound with something else, which we'll talk about. And then there's galactose. Galactose is typically bound with another sugar as a disaccharide. Why do we teach these three sugars? It's actually very simple. There are transporters. Transporters are protein-based molecules that sit inside the GI tract. And what they do is they transport sugar that was in food into the body. Well, there's transporters for glucose, galactose, and fructose. Yes, there are other monosaccharides in nature. We may, in fact, have transporters for them, but we have a lot of transporters for glucose, galactose, and fructose. So we really just teach these, in essence, because we absorb these in great abundance. That's why we teach these three. The only three monosaccharides you need to know in John's class are glucose, galactose, and fructose. And generally speaking, we don't eat a lot of individual glucose, galactose, and fructose. We eat their parent molecules, the disaccharides. So skip the left side, go to the right side. So maltose is made up of 2 glucose. Remember, glucose can be absorbed. We have a transporter. And we actually have an enzyme for maltose in the GI tract called maltase. Remember, the ase is the enzyme, the ose is the sugar. So since we have the enzyme, we can eat maltose, which is abundantly present in grains, bread, beer, all sorts of products. We can break it, we can digest it, and we can absorb the babies, the daughter-child molecules, glucose and glucose. Sucrose, you know sucrose. It's table sugar. It's simple sugar. It's syrup. It's half the drinks. No, I shouldn't say that. It's most of the drinks my kids' generation are consuming right now at the Starbucks, Dutch Brothers, the boba places with the tea drinks. Just a lot of sugar water. The sugar would be sucrose. We have an enzyme, sucrase. So when we eat sucrose, we absorb, because we break the sucrose into fructose and glucose and absorb those 2 molecules. Are there other disaccharides in nature? Sure, but we have a lot of enzymes for these 3. By the way, sucrose is the same as high fructose corn syrup, really. This is 50% glucose, 50% fructose, right? In half, fructose, glucose. High fructose corn syrup is sucrose, if you will, from corn. And if you did the average of all the sugars in corn, it's 55% fructose, 45% glucose. High fructose corn syrup is sometimes labeled HFCS 55, high fructose corn syrup 55. Same thing. It's basically table sugar. And the one on the bottom is lactose, milk sugar. And we have an enzyme. If you carry the Northern European mutation enzyme, lactase, so that when you consume milk as an adult, you can break the enzyme, the sugar, lactose, into galactose and glucose. There's the galactose. It's inside the sugar that's in dairy products. And we absorb the galactose and the glucose. All right. We'll start the next slide on the complex carbohydrates.